Welcome to part 6 of my series on Sedevacantism, the Catholic perspective. This is Griff Ruby. As I've indicated, I first began to see how Lumen Gentium created the legal possibility of Catholics in good and visible standing with the Church to be both inside and outside the Vatican organization equally. The next thing I observed was that this had certain ramifications for that organization. Because what this really comes down to is an issue of identity. Ontologically, they are not, as an organization, the Catholic Church. In exactly the same sense that you could say that Ford Motor Company is not the church. It doesn't mean you couldn't have Catholics who belong to it and Catholics who don't. It just means that the organization, as an organization, as such, is not the church. Well, that one simple fact explains a whole lot. And when you couple that with what I've already explained before about how its leader wouldn't be Pope, you have an organization that does not enjoy any of the church's prerogatives. It is not, its leader is not infallible, but also as an organization, it is not indefectible. It can defect. And brother, has it ever defected? I mean, if you want to take it as a church, it's a wildly false one. Because we all saw the numerous things that have happened that couldn't have happened. Now, I know there will be people who say, well, there have been bad times before. We've had bad popes, bad bishops, bad priests, and so forth, who lived very moral lives, who passed very destructive laws, who did bad things. Yes, we did. But it also had the answer to all of those kinds of situations. And it was just Jesus himself. When he said, about the Pharisees, you should do what they say, for they sit in the chair of Moses, which is what there was before there was the chair of Peter. There was the chair of Moses. But do not do as they do. You see, the Pharisees, as legal experts in the doctrines and the teachings and what we're supposed to do, could still tell the truth. They could be relied upon to tell you what you must do to be honoring God. But you had to go only by what they said, what they taught in their official capacity, not by how they lived, because they were hypocrites. They were play actors, really is what the word means. They were pretending to be holy, but they would rob widows of their fortunes and show an extraordinary disregard for the poor, for the struggling, be very, very self-righteous, always looking down their nose at everybody less righteous than themselves and denouncing them in every way. They were just very, and then when Jesus came along, instead of being, receiving him and being impressed by his godly example, they chose instead to have a pharisaic scandal. So they were very bad-hearted individuals. But even as bad-hearted individuals, you could still be guided by what they taught. And that was handed over to the church. Basically, on Pentecost, the throne of Peter officially came into existence. Peter, though he in some ways was like the head of the apostles before, but our Lord was still among them. And of course, he, along with all of them, scattered when our Lord was crucified. But on Pentecost, that's when the church was born. That's when the chair of Peter was officially born, when that began. And the chair of Moses, though continuing to exist in parallel for a season, eventually was destroyed when Jerusalem was destroyed, and Judaism has been divided by all the different opinions ever since. And I mean, to this day, rabbi can argue with a rabbi over some finer point of Talmudic law, But one thing to learn from them is at the end of the day, they go have a beer together and drink it off and laugh it off, and, they're still brothers. We can probably learn a lesson from that, because there's a lot of fine points now. We're kind of in a similar circumstance. Although there is a chair of Peter, it's been empty. It's been empty since November 21, 1964, and probably not really functioning very well for some years before that. So you could always go by what they said. What the whole Vatican II situation introduced was now you cannot even go by what they say. You cannot believe what they teach. Some things will be right, but some will be wrong. Well, that could be said of any kind of minister. A Methodist minister can tell you some good things that'll be true and wonderful, but it's not all going to be true. There's going to be things that aren't true. There's going to be important truths that should be mentioned, but don't get mentioned, even if he doesn't contradict them. He's no source of truth. And they've become the same way. They are not sources of truth. They are not sources of anything, really, that you can depend upon. You can't follow their example. We know that. I mean, if I kissed a Koran, I'd have to confess that, But I doubt he ever did. Well, for his sake, I hope he did, but I haven't heard that he ever did. You see? So obviously we can't do what they do. But more importantly, we can't even do what they say. They tell us to attend false worship, Protestant worship, essentially, an invalid ceremony, and they don't even care about sacramental validity. That's one of the things that's fallen through the cracks. Instead of consecrational formula, using certain matter and form, intent, and minister, now it's just we have a narrative. We tell a story. An individual priest might still try to tell the story, intending it as more, but that's up to his own individual choice and training and not something they're teaching their seminarians to do. He's just reading a story and then, okay, let's have a nice, drink here in memory of our good friend Jesus. It's a Protestant ceremony. And they don't care. When in Canada they found about 1,000 children who weren't baptized, did they go and baptize them? No, they just said, the church supplies. That's not what the church supplies means. So they don't care. The whole realm of sacramental theology has been ditched. They don't believe in it anymore. It's gone. There's a whole lot of stuff they don't believe. Most importantly, they don't believe that there's the one God. Now all the different gods of the nations are incognitos of the true God. So now in worshiping the great Lumbago or Brahma or, the ancestors or, whatever religion has you worship, now they're claiming that, that is going to save you. Not becoming a Catholic. Or even joining their organization, not even becoming a Novus Ordo. You can join or not, it doesn't matter to them. It's enough that you just have something. And that's their whole belief system now. That's the whole basis. They cannot be trusted even in what they say. That is the important distinction. They are no longer indefectible, and as such they can cease to exist. But now, what does that say of those who have kept the faith, whether inside or outside that organization? What does that say of the real Catholics? I'll get to that in the next part.